this movement of women in health, especially I would say like the last decade, because this is the first time in the history of human civilization where women have been able to be empowered in their health and be able to empower to make these decisions and learn this knowledge and break those patterns that our ancestors were never able to break, because we're living in this world of information. And I think it's such a powerful time to be a woman and to be alive, because you get to make those decisions.
This is exactly the mindset. I'm like, a woman heals, the whole family heals. The whole family heals, communities heal. Communities heal, the world heals.
So we're well on our way into the third season here of the Clear Skin Chronicles. And since the very beginning, a guest topic that we wanted to have on, right, Cris, has been Ayurveda. Because both you and I find such huge value in Ayurveda. We weave a little bit into what we do with our clients over in the Clear Skin Solution. And it's such an incredible healing system from India that has so many incredible like ancient wisdoms and insights. So that's why I am so excited to have today's guest on. We have Nidhi Pandya, an Ayurvedic doctor and creator of the Inner Climate Method. And what I really loved about you, Nidhi, when I was first checking your stuff out, was that you take a really great approach to health and longevity, where you blend that ancient wisdom of Ayurveda with modern science and that accumulation of your 15 years of dedicated practice in the subject.
Thank you so much, Katie. And it's an honor to be here with both of you, Cris and Katie. So thank you for having me.
Yeah, we're like I said, we've been really looking forward to having an Ayurvedic practitioner on, because there's so much incredible insights that Ayurveda can give into the body and into healing and into longevity. So I would love for you, what really led you into this world of Ayurveda and, to build and create your Inner Climate Method?
Right. So I was actually immersed in Ayurveda at birth, right? Because I was born to, I've been the granddaughter of an Ayurvedic healer back in Bombay. And I was raised in a large joint family. So of course, my grandfather lived with us. And this is the only way I knew how to live. It was my first language. So the only way I understood the body and the world around us was through Ayurvedic principles, without ever using the words according to Ayurveda. So when you kind of omit that phrase, everything that you're learning then kind of becomes this kind of innate reality for you. For example, I'm just going to give you an example. So the Ayurveda, which translates into the science of life, it's very connected to the rhythms. Everything is about rhythms, right? Everything is about rhythms. Everything is about climate. So there are rhythms outside, the rhythm of the day, the circadian rhythm, for example, or the rhythm in a month, right? Like your menstrual rhythms, and the sleeping and waking, or just like even every hour has its own rhythms, right? So for example, I was raised, I want to give you just, instead of my mom telling me, hey, come back home by 7 p.m. when I'm down to play, she would say, come back home when you see the bats weave through the sky. So right there, you make this connection. Oh, like the bats come out, they may be nocturnal, and when they come out, it's my time to go home. Or something like as simple as, hey, be careful with how much yogurt you eat at night, because your fire is not so active. Or like you'd rather eat yogurt in the day. So now I have learned, there is a fire, and that affects my digestibility, and yogurt is heavy, and you want to eat light in the day. There's so much to learn in that one statement. So when you grow up like that, you have no other, the only way you connect with the world is through this wisdom. Of course, I was a naturally curious child. I was very sensitive. I had a large family, and I was always observing. My sisters called me a social scientist because I was always observing how people respond differently to the same stimulus, whether it's in food, whether it's in a social interaction, whether it's in a calamity, but everybody has a different response. And I was always observing people and their patterns. So I became this pattern seer. And it was very natural for me when it came time to really decide what I want to do in the world out there, is to say, how do I now get a formal education in Ayurveda and bring this incredible wisdom to the world out there?
I love it. And just from this 2 minutes of you introducing yourself in the world of Ayurveda, I know Cris and I are like, oh my gosh, yes, we have the best Ayurvedic doctor on the show today.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Because I think, Cris, as you'll agree, it's really different when you've lived this the entirety of your life from birth, and you're taught this, as a late teen or early 20.
Absolutely. It's like learning a second language. And, honestly, my challenge to myself is how can I teach this as a first language to people later in their lives? Literally, that's my life's mission and challenge.
I love that. Now, Cris, I know you're itching because I can already see your brains going over there with 600 questions. So I'm going to let you ask your question first before I hog her.
No, not even a question. I just find it so fascinating that it's not that Ayurvedic has been adopted by XYZ date, right? We all have a birth date, these types of things. It's well over 5,000 years that, if you go to any publication, it'll say that. But what I find fascinating is it wasn't until the 20th century that people started to go, oh, and noticing that this is, what we call like a holistic concept where it takes the mind, the body, the spirit, the language, the culture, the interconnections, everything into it. And I'm glad it's gained in popularity, because as that gains in popularity, it means people are awakening. So when you're going to teach it as a language and as an over encompassing, people are ready to receive it. So beautiful timing, absolutely.
Yeah, I'm really glad that I'm born in this century, even though I feel like I've done this for lifetimes. Also because the world is flat right now, and we really have a host of these crises. And we're in such a beautiful place at the same time where we are able to draw upon each other's wisdom across the planet. Now, that being said, the one thing that I want to add is that while the word Ayurveda and this term coined in this exact manner comes from India, I have studied blue zones and I've studied ancient cultures, and I've seen, listen, they all understood the science of life is the science of life. Gravity in Toronto and Ontario is the same thing as gravity in New York. Like, these are just the principles of the planet. And people understood them and had different terminology or semantics. And sometimes it was unsaid. But when I look at how people ate and how they lived, they understood Ayurveda. They understood the science of life.
It's really incredible and fascinating. And for me, I've been digging more into Ayurveda. I'm nowhere near, of course, your level. I haven't lived this my first language. But I can see so profoundly that these ancient wisdoms and these practices that Ayurveda really breathes into everyday life can have such a massive impact on the different health issues that you're facing, but even your health and your longevity and your vitality overall. So for obviously our clientele dealing with acne, I would love to just start digging into some of the insights that Ayurveda and your teachings have into that symptom of acne.
Absolutely. And I love how you call it a symptom, right? Because so many people treat acne like a condition when it is actually only a symptom. And what is it a symptom of, right? So acne can be a symptom of many, many different things, but always, if it is chronic and it is persistent, it has to do more with your internal than with your external. Now, I'm not saying because its manifestation is external treatments can help tremendously, but really you want to fix the internal. So what are some of the few things that can affect acne and why is it caused, right? So acne is of various types. There's dry acne, there is like really cystic, pus-filled acne. There is acne because you have this you have more androgens, male hormones, which becomes a little bit more cystic and heavier acne. So acne can happen. It can start at your gut most of the times, right? So the two main causes that I have found. A is when you're not being able to eat, nourish, and eliminate your waste effectively. As a result, now according to the Ayurvedic understanding, what we would believe is as the result, the nutrients that get dumped into your blood, right? I mean, your blood and plasma are carrying everything across your body. It's like this whole transportation system of nutrients, essentially. And so everything that gets transported, for example, if you've eaten a lot of hot, spicy foods, the viscosity of that blood, the kind of basic nature of what's flowing through your pipes in your body changes. And then when it goes to your face and, travels there, by then it's already picked up a lot of debris. And the manifestation, especially for young women, is often acne. Now, the second situation is usually hormonal, which ends up being actually even deeper than acne. And I tell people, what are hormones? Hormones are your body's way of kind of creating a clock, It's this alarm system. Hey, it's time to start ovulating. It's time. So your body is releasing hormones so that you can systematically really get into one function or the other. Now, when we are living lives or when we are messing with our hormones, or we are living lives that are completely gone off rhythm, right, off the clock, whether it's a sleep and wake cycles, whether it is just, it's not honoring the way the body is meant to work, and your hormones can go off. So your diet can play a part in the gut as well as the hormones. How you honor your rhythms on a daily, monthly basis can also affect your hormones. And usually for most people, it is a combination of the two. And then also what happens, right? A lot of times people see acne in transitions. There, you're hitting menarche and you'll see acne. You're hitting, sometimes people in pregnancy have pregnancy acne. Sometimes people have perimenopausal acne, postmenopausal acne, because whenever your body kind of releases its hormone to create a massive transition, the climate of the body significantly changes. As the climate changes, and if you don't have a healthy absorption and waste elimination mechanism, both of which are very important in Ayurveda. What is your waste elimination mechanism? What is your absorption mechanism? And when both of them are damaged, then as a result, you can see manifestation of skin disorders, acne, etc. So usually it is how your inner climate, I just use the word climate because it's very easy to understand, how your body's internal climate is affected either by the foods you eat, by the transitions that are happening in your clock, or by just overall imbalance that you have created.
Nidhi, I think you're our new best friend. Because literally everything you're saying, Cris and I are like, yep, this is what we talk about with our clients all the time. And I think, when we look back to that gut, something we often talk about with our clients is that agni, that digestive fire that's required in order to have good digestion. So would you be able to, from that Ayurvedic perspective, talk a little bit about that agni?
Yeah, and I think it's actually a very important concept to discuss, right? Because when people first get into Ayurveda, one of the first concepts they end up encountering is this idea of agni. And then the literal translation of agni is fire. Right. So I have seen people who said, oh my God, fire. And they have bought agni. I'm going to talk about what you can do wrong first before what you can do right.
I love it. Let's do it.
So I've seen people buy agni boosting teas, cayenne pepper, ginger, cloves. I mean, you name it, every hot spice out there. As a result, they're short-tempered, their periods are coming sooner, they're breaking out even more, and they're believing that, oh, my heat is coming out of the body. And I'm like, agni is not a fire that burns dry, right? So the two types of fire, there's a fire on a matchstick. There's a forest fire. Forest fires are destructive. The fire of a matchstick burns dry. But the fire of an oil lamp, it's steady and it burns really well. It's a sustained fire. Very often when people overdo the hot spices thinking they're boosting their agni, they actually end up hurting their bodies. So my ask of everybody is you be very careful with how much of this in traditional Ayurveda, and even today, that's how I live. My spices and my herbs don't make it to my capsules and supplements. They make it to my food because that's a way of diluting them. You eat them with good fats. I mean, my joke is what Western medicine puts in supplements, I put on my food every single day. So basically, it's like when you're playing with spices, I would rather you ask yourself, how can I craftily use this in my foods, in my tea, in making a milk out of them, than putting them in supplements or drinking really, really strong spicy teas. So agni is that warm and moist digestive environment that fermented foods kind of seek to kindle, that rice broth with ginger seeks to kindle, that a well-cooked, warm, nourishing meal with good fats and spices. They're all warm and moist. Even fermented foods, for example, and small amount of fermented foods. You don't want to have fire in there. And that's why like a sauerkraut on the side or kimchi on the side or an olive on the side, because the process of fermentation really requires that warmth. It's a warm process because it's a reproduction of bacteria and it's an aerobic process. So there is always this moisture that's released. So it's this like literally oil lamp. And which is protecting your mucus lining is being protected, so you're not you're not just eating spices and really creating ulcers or depleting your mucus lining, and it's still supporting your acids and the breakdown of your foods.
Katie and I are both exactly where you are, where we want to eat the foods, and then depending on the responses, if we need some assistance, and then get into the supplements. However, it's a whole encompassing lifestyle, right? And what I love about your specific practice is it's also about identifying each unique body type or body system, the person, their constitution, right? We can't leave that out. That's something that definitely inside the Clear Skin Solution, that's where we hang out half the time. We're very much into what worked for a person with the same cystic acne and heat-like patterns and is not going to work over here because they had a different upbringing and they have a trauma. And so really looking at that whole is, I just love to, if you could just kind of, sorry, Kate, this is like
I know you're
big
excited.
deal. I know. So when you look at people and they have similar likes, so let's take acne. We take photos and we're like, whoa, that acne is the same. What are some of the things that you do to start delineating, to isolate that? No, you know what? I'm not going to do the same process because XYZ.
And firstly, absolutely, Cris, there's a lot of merit in taking supplements where it's required, but what you can eat in your food. So I'm completely with you. What you can eat in your food needs to be eaten with your food because it needs to be diluted in a certain manner. And then, of course, when you use support, things become more potent. So I'm completely with you. So when I see two people, right, like somebody says, hey, find me a solution for my acne here, take a picture. That's not enough for me, right? Because I need two identical pictures and that's not enough for me, from two different people, because it's really the person who has the condition. It is not the condition. And one of the first things that I personally do is ask them, what other symptoms are you experiencing? How are your bowel movements? How are your periods? How are your moods? What are your sleep and wake cycles? I mean, these are the most preliminary questions. And what does this, and this allows me to understand the causes that they are creating, that, which elimination, of course, is the first line of treatment in Ayurveda. So without understanding the causes, I can't really change I cannot really treat person. But what it also gives me an insight into what I call their inner climate. What is happening in their body. So for example, somebody tells me that, hey, I have all of this cystic acne, and I'm like, hey, what's happening? And then they can say, hey, listen, I've been traveling and I've been addicted to this jalapeno poppers, and I've been eating spicy pizza with lots of cheese and all this high fat and high spice content, and I've been working on a project and that's really getting me very aggressive. And so when I see all of that, and I'm like, this person is overly hot and humid, right? Versus somebody else who can just say, hey, I have this cystic acne because I have been on this fertility treatment and I've been taking these hormones, and this is why I have this acne. And I'm not saying that the treatments will be completely different. I'm sure there'll be some parallels to them. There will be some things common that I might use for both. But at least it gives me a sense of what's really happening in their body, in their inner climate, is what I need to fix, right? It's like we pack for the weather, right? If you're going somewhere and you're going on vacation, once you understand the climate, you know how to pack. Similarly, once I understand the body's inner climate, I know what types of food and what is the type of food, lifestyle, exercise, any other tools that they require.
Mm-hmm. And that's exactly it, right? It's about not just the acne itself, because it should never be isolated when you're looking at it, because it's a symptom in the body, just like painful periods, bloat, low energy, whatever those other symptoms may be. Having worked with, close to 3,000 acne clients, we've never seen acne just itself. It always comes along with some of its friends. And when we're looking at those additional symptoms, whether it's the bloat, it's the irregular digestion, it's the inflammation, it's, a lot of the period problems. For you, would this come to a point where you would be looking at, say, their dosha, or is that more kind of like a general umbrella from Ayurveda?
So I think once you start looking at their digestion and their periods and all of those things, you kind of start understanding their dosha. And the word inner climate is a more comprehensible, maybe a little deeper way of understanding their dosha. Because what often happens, right? I can say, hey, this is your dosha. Now for somebody who doesn't really understand their dosha, it doesn't mean anything. It's just like, oh, now I know why I'm like this, because this quiz said so and Nidhi said so. And really, that's not what I want. But I really want you to start understanding. So when somebody understands, hey, I have inflammation markers, but if I tell them, oh, you're very inflamed, like you can see that your body is hot and humid, for example, and it's like, it's a little puffy, you feel burning sensation, your digestion, you have acidity, all of those, right? Like it's literally lava through people's bodies sometimes who are overly inflamed. I'm like, your blood has literally become thick like lava. And sometimes these are the same people who have nosebleeds, who have clots in their periods. Now, suddenly this whole new lens of climate it's like, oh yeah, this makes sense. And that's why I'm feeling so hot and aggressive in my mindset as well. So it allows them to connect all the dots. And usually once we understand the climate, you'll see it systematically affect all systems of the body, especially digestion and reproductive systems. And then for some people, it stays in the core. That I say it stays in the inner systems. And for some, sometimes it can manifest as this perpetual phlegm, painful throats, tonsillitis, all the itises. For some people, it can manifest as acne. It's whether the imbalance is more in your lymph or it's more in your blood. But people don't really need to get that deep. Once they start understanding the climate and they need to understand how they start balancing it, then it becomes possible for them to really deviate from what they're doing. For example, if somebody's body is very hot and dry and they're consuming tons of apple cider vinegar, they don't get better. They end up with H. pylori at the end of it.
Yeah. And I love that you brought that up, right? Because we get that question all the time is, what about apple cider vinegar? Can I just take apple cider vinegar and it solves all of my digestive problems and my acne goes away? And it's like, well, maybe in the right situation, apple cider vinegar can be a helpful tool in the toolbox, but it's not going to be a catch-all. And I think the issue is with social media and Instagram and TikTok, they're using it as their health practitioner to like, oh no, I saw this influencer and they said like they just take this like apple cider vinegar cayenne shot every morning and it makes everything better in their body, right? It's like we're all cringing at that.
Yeah, basically it's the dry forest fire. You'll suddenly get a metabolic boost. You'll suddenly get a lot of energy. And then in a few weeks, you'll be left with like this aggressive dry heat in your body. You may notice hair fall, notice depletion, and then it spirals from there.
Now, I love that we also touched on a little bit about hormones. And I love how you talked about that hormonal cycle through the body. And I think this is such a big one because most of our audience is women. We're dealing with these cycles every single month. And Cris, what would you say is one of the biggest factors we work on with our clients when it comes to their hormones, that big S word? The reason why I was bringing stress up is because it is such a massive component to this like North American way that we live here. It's like we run on stress. We kind of wear it as like a badge of honor. We're like, oh no, I'm doing all of this and I have this big work project. My kids are going here. I have this busy schedule. I only sleep 4 hours a night. And we forget that some really foundational things to our health is improving the way our body responds to stress and working on the stress. So I would love from your perspective, how can we really be mitigating that stress and improving our health?
Right. And, stress has a few different things which kind of aggravates every condition. I think at the onset, the first thing, it changes your body chemistry. It changes your body's priorities and body chemistry. So if your body was happy, chilling, repairing, digesting, now it says you can't do any of these functions. So you essentially go off repair and off the being, and you get into doing mode constantly. So your body chemistry is more heated, it's more charged up. It becomes a car that has run 5,000 miles all together. And now the engine is really, really heated up. And that's exactly the response in our body. It heats up the body. There is no doubt that once it heats up the body, acne and heat are very, very related. But secondly, what it also does is that it changes because I said it changes priorities. Now the hormones that it was going to release, hey, it's digestion time. Let's get those gastrin and those great acids out. Or hey, it's time to ovulate because, it's like this time. Let's get the libido high and let's get you excited so maybe you can conceive. All of that takes a hit because it's like that is not priority right now. And in it, that we need to work on this different chemistry altogether. And when the body's hormones start changing their behavior to prioritize what is not essential for its internal clock, but rather for these create man-made priorities, you're just playing with this organization. Think of this amazing office where everything is organized. Everybody has their tasks and their synergies. And now suddenly everybody's roles are thrown off because there's an emergency in this place. And people are filling in for each other. Some people are not doing anything. Some people are doing too much. And that's really what happens in the body. So it affects the chemistry. It affects the clocks of the body and the priorities of the body. And thirdly, I think it starts creating behaviors which again aggravate the situation further. So most people for coping, they will eat excessive food, eat excessive sugar. Again, big inflammatory substance, right? People will start drinking. People will stay up at night. So it also causes behaviors which further exacerbate the problem. One of the biggest things that I do in my practice, actually before people even start working with me, is everybody has to create their toolbox. I say undoing Undoing a habit, undoing a disease, undoing a condition is about undoing yourself, which means what are the moments where I feel heightened inside? Again, hot and dry. Stress is very hot and dry. When do I start feeling like this? And how do I regulate myself? And for that, each person has to build out a toolbox, which has 3 types of tools. A is preventative tools, something I do every day to restore my body's chemistry and grounding. It could be an abhyanga, which is a self-massage. It could be a meditative practice. It could just be listening to classical music in the background. But I want to give my body the memory of how it feels to be safe so I don't get addicted to stress. That's preventative tools. B is battlefield tools. When I'm on the battlefield and I am feeling the intensity rise, like there's a work deadline and there's a box of sugar, like there's a box of this candy with sugar sitting and I'm feeling like, oh my God, what's happening? What do you use on the battlefield? So then I give people an a la carte menu of battlefield tools. I'm like, you try all of them, you keep a few. And each one may not work each time, but you want to have enough tools. And then the third is repair tools. That life happens. We all need to heal from the day, A, and sometimes we need to heal from larger crises. So simpler tools to heal from the day, but you also want tools that can help you to heal from large periods. You should already have a plan that when crisis hits in my life and I need recovery, this is how I recover. So I think just that building out that toolkit for everybody makes a massive difference now when you come to actually approach this kind of healing work.
There were so many good takeaways in what you just said, Cris. I'm sure you picked out a bunch as well. So for me, what I really love is you said that when you're working to, feel better, work on your conditions, your health issues, your symptoms, you're having to undo yourself, which is exactly that, because all of these habits and things you've had in place and what's happened to your life has created your health in this exact moment. And we're never going to reach that next level of health or longevity or vitality if we keep doing the same things over and over again. So I love that you said it's about undoing it. Cris, what did you say I think I already know what your takeaway was going to be, but I don't know.
No, I say the same things to clients because I'm like, what we're asking you to do is unlearn everything you've been taught as normal. We're asking you to relearn a completely new concept while applying it. I said, remember when you used to tie your shoes and run and they come undone? This is what we're asking you to do as an adult that has done a frustrated amount of years with untied shoes, right? We don't know the cause. So we have all of this congestion. And then what do? Then we reform habits for sustainability because the end goal is sustainability. It shouldn't be when people use the word diet. Oh, I can just tell you, I like it. That's like, like when a dog sees a cat and it's like hair goes up, it goes ridge back. That's me. And I'm like, did you just don't use the word? It has such a bad connotation. So I really love that you're just zoning in on that because I truly talk to clients day in and day in and day in and day in. There's no day out. And one little concept is maybe as you're working with your clients and everything is often it's followed with, this is so hard. And I say, is it hard or is it new? What's the difference? And I really have them sit with that. And then they have to explain, is it hard or is it new? And what's the difference of it? So I love this practice because mind, body, spirit encompasses all of that, right? And you're giving the toolbox. If they don't show up and they don't do the work, guess what? You have nothing to work with as a practitioner, right?
Absolutely. And yet I want to say this to all the women who are listening out there, that I understand the struggle. It's real. And I also tell women, like, don't blame yourself. We're all descending from weakened genetic frameworks, conditioning that we've received in our families, social conditioning. There is limited, basically compromised nourishment, food, social environments that we are really breeding ourselves in. So here we are, a bundle, a result of all of this. And I'm like, I don't want you to blame yourself because we are really the version of the limited choices that we received. But fact that we have this opportunity that honestly our mothers and our grandmothers didn't have in this way, because this is this time for women around the planet to awaken. And you have the chance to start the undoing, which now you can pass on to your future generations. And all you have to do is start undoing it and just brace yourselves while you do it. And new ways of being and new ways of living, that now so you don't create the same trauma and the same lifestyle conditions. At the same time, I also, there's one more thing I want to tell everybody, because we're talking about periods and acne and hormones and all of that, right? Listen, it's hard for us. It's like we go through the entire 4 seasons every single month, right? Like we have a winter, we have a fall, we have everything happening. We have a summer, we have a spring right here in our uterus. And it makes us volatile. And I'm like, yeah, it does make us more volatile. It's happening because it's so many changes. And I'm like, what makes you volatile? It also makes us adaptable. So let's be proud of that as well, So like my heart, I exclusively work with women, and my heart goes out to all. And yet like look at who's having this conversation. Every health conversation, 80% women, Yes, there's a place for male doctors, unfortunately, in our country. But I'm like, who's really at this whole grassroots level having this conversation, receiving this conversation, waking up every day thinking about how to live better, how to heal better, how to pass it on to our future generations better? And it is women. And I think every woman who's listening to this should take a moment really and applaud herself at how far she's come and how much she wants to learn.
I think that's just its entire podcast episode on its own, right? Is this movement of women in health, especially I would say like the last decade, because this is the first time in the history of human civilization where women have been able to be empowered in their health and be able to empower to make these decisions and learn this knowledge and break those patterns that our ancestors were never able to break, because we're living in this world of information. And I think it's such a powerful time to be a woman and to be alive, because you get to make those decisions. And you're exactly right, Nidhi, it is women making those changes in health and having this conversation and waking up every day thinking, how can I feel better? How can I help my kids feel better? How can I help my partner or whoever it may be, my loved ones? And it really is women that are pushing this forward. And something that I really, really love is that when you empower women in their health and they start to feel better, they're able to show up in the world in a way that they're meant to, so that they can make the changes in this world and we can all move this forward together.
I resonate so much with everything that both of you are saying. Like, this is exactly the mindset. I'm like, a woman heals, the whole family heals. The whole family heals, communities heal. Communities heal, the world heals. We just need to start at women. Seriously. I mean, we can remember when we were younger and we saw our mothers struggle or their moods deviate and what that did for us. So if we have healing mothers, I mean, that is the biggest parenting gift.
100%. No, I think everything really does start. And I love that you said that when the woman changes, the family, the community, the world, and that really is such a massive shift that we're going to be able to make. And, when we're looking at our health, it's one thing to just be eating the foods and having those lifestyle habits, but it's so much more than that, right? There really is that mind-body connection. So how can we be working on that mind-body connection from that Ayurvedic perspective?
Yeah. And like, again, honestly, it is the tools. But what I can do is talk about some of the tools of regulation, which can be kind of very, very different. So I'll tell you there are 3 tools that I want to talk about, which are very easy for everyone, right? And this again comes from the Vedic wisdom. And your breath is this bridge between your mind and body. And so your breath and your endocrine system, which is also known as your chakra system, these energy centers where you're like, the West is now discovering, oh my God, there are these endocrine glands that release these substances. And based on these substances, my body chemistry changes and my body's priorities change, right? So the 3 tools I'm going to give you are here for that bridge. You're essentially learning to like really enhance the function of this bridge. So let's talk about the breath first. Firstly, your inhalation and exhalations do different functions, and your right and left nostrils do have different function altogether. And I just want people, even if it's the first time you're listening to this concept, just sit with it, because I'll tell you right here in this little triangular on your face is a world of healing. And we all hear about deep breaths, but I'm going to take it 3 notches further. Every inhale sets your body in action mode. It gets oxygenated, what we call the sympathetic mode. It's an action mode for the body. Every exhale is a repair mode. So right in every breath, you have the opportunity for repair. Unfortunately, when we're doing too much go, 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 and do, we don't realize, but subconsciously we are shortening our exhales. And that's why at the end of a really busy, stressful day, we are like, your body forces out that exhale. So my first tool is, when you're feeling intense, you're probably not realizing, but you're doing very short exhales and you're almost holding and choking yourself with your breath. So when that intensity builds up, start humming. Because humming is a natural nasal exhalation. You close your mouth, you whistle a happy tune, and your mouth is, and you're basically exhaling through your nose. So I have songs which I know I don't sound horrible at, that I'm always humming whenever I feel intensity building up. Such a simple tool that you can take to your battlefield. There are times when I was doing my clinical training and I had to do like surgery and other procedures, and I felt like judged with these 30 people. Here I was humming, and I was like, I aced every time that I was humming. So humming is one practice, and it's a very strong regulation tool. And the second one, when I talked about the right and the left nostrils, the right nostril is more solar, more to do with the left side of the brain, and the left nostril is more lunar, more to do with the creative side, more emotional side of the brain. So when it's solar, it means it sets you more heat, more action, more doing, more like the sun, right? Like the sun, you wake up and you do stuff. And the lunar means you repair and you bring that moisture back in your body. And there is a practice called alternate nostril breathing, which I literally tell people to do 5 times, like it's prayer, like you're driving, do a few rounds, And anybody can look this up on YouTube. There's a lot of videos, but it's a systematic practice that you can do, breathing in through the left, exhaling through right, breathing in through right, exhaling through left, and holding a little bit in between, so that nitric oxide, which instantly resets everything and really helps with your stress response, is released. So again, that is a second practice. And I just wanted to plant the seed out there in the listeners. It also helps with hormonal regulation. It really balances the climate of your body, the sun and the moon. When the sun and the moon are doing their thing, the climate is right on the planet. Similarly, when your solar and lunar energy channels are working fine, you will notice the difference right away. In fact, I invite people to say when they're feeling intense, their right nostril is probably more active. When they're feeling lethargic and lazy, their left nostril is probably more active. So anyway, so that. And then I am still going to offer so these are the 2 breath practices. And then the third practice is music. 7 notes, 7 endocrine glands, 7 chakras. All classical music is designed to stimulate a certain endocrine gland to release a certain neurotransmitter. In fact, if you go on Spotify, you'll see morning ragas and evening ragas. These are Indian musical compositions, but it doesn't have to be Eastern. You can listen to Western classical. I mean, that has some component, like a great component of it. That's why the song Weightless is proven to reduce anxiety by 60-70%. So play music, let it do your work. Your cells have an auditory capability. Your cells can understand the vibration of sound outside, and your entire body is vibrating. You never have to listen with your ears. So I just wanted to give 3 simple tools. I would love to talk about meditation and all deeper practices, which I love and I practice. But really, I want to give people simple tools when they're listening to this podcast. And humming, alternate nostril breathing, just musicify whatever that word is. Just I'm making up a word, but just get that music in your life as much as you can.
And you know what's so great about those recommendations of the alternate nostril breathing, the listening to the music, is they're free to do, and they can be done anywhere. So whenever someone's like, oh, I don't have time to incorporate, something new or stress reduction, I'm like, well, what about when you're sitting at a traffic light? Do you have time to do some alternate nostril breathing then?
Basically, right? I think the best tools are the ones that are most accessible, easy, free, and not time consuming. So of course, there's an app called the Resonance app, which allows you to exhale longer, but I'm like, just hum. There's a reason why ohms feel so good in yoga class, because you're exhaling, So I'm like, just hum your favorite tune. Just hum all day long. Just play music in the background. Like for me, the minute I wake up, I have music. Like my girls are listening to their own music, right? So my house is like this big DJ party. Like everyone music,
Well, I think I'm going to have to move in with you, because it's also a DJ party at our house at all times. I'm listening to music all day long, unless I am on a Zoom or a meeting. There is music playing somewhere in our house.
Basically.
Yeah.
Because when you're happy, you hum, but you know what? Humming also makes you happy. The other way is true as well. When you're noticing that intensity build up in your system, it helps it helps your body to feel safe because it takes it into parasympathetic because you're exhaling.
This has been such a great talk. And like before we, finish it up, because we talk really generally about gut, about hormones, emotional well-being, I wanted to dig a little bit more into nutrition because what we do, obviously being nutritionists, is really big there. And when I was checking out your Instagram before we came and did our podcast today, is one thing that really caught my attention was you talked about protein. And the reason I bring this up is because protein is that macronutrient that we see our clients being the most deficient in. They're just not eating enough of it. They're not sure how to integrate it into their life. And I really love that you were talking about your tips for protein. So I thought we could go through a couple of those.
Yeah. I will say though, I know there's a lot of talk of protein, but there is a danger in too much protein too soon. And unfortunately, I think the Western diet is devoid in protein for the first 20 years. And then everybody wants to double down on protein. And I think that is the problem. And also our gut is not efficient in breaking down and utilizing protein as much as, unfortunately, if you're biologically male, you have the testosterone to use that protein and your body knows exactly the specific function. So for women, it is a little bit of a longer shot to do that protein, which you still do our protein. I do my protein every single day, right? But it is do protein in food forms if you can, right? As much of your protein consumption. And like a lentil soup is what has been done traditionally for many, many, generations. And we've done it very safely. It's cooked, it's warm, it's spiced. The spices will help the breakdown of the protein. It is all traditional recipes have that correct combination. Also, there's like fermented lentil preparations. And I feel like almost a lot of cultures, if you dig in, you'll find the recipe of some fermented lentil preparation that is in your culture. And, use that. Right. So those are the first two, like always cooked protein, make it into your foods, do it in the daytime, do it after exercise, make sure that when you're not feeling well and your metabolic ability is not at par to not do protein. And I would say you want to start protein in microdoses if you're not used to it, so that your body, because there's a lot of toxic waste, right? It's very earthy, very heavy, and that can be released and your body may not know what to do with it. Of course, spices and cooking always helps. So when you can spice it, when you can cook it, please do that. Dairy protein can be difficult for some people to digest, but the warmer it is, so if you're cooking it, you're making it into a yogurt, you're making it into what we call an Ayurvedic buttermilk, it's easier to digest. You do your seeds, you do your nuts, you do it throughout the day, you keep exercising, warm spice. And I think those are my, and be prepared that as a female, it's harder for your body to break that down. So be kind and gentle and listen to your system as you build up your protein intake.
And like, you're just so on par with what we do, because we have so many clients coming in, they're eating barely any protein and they're like, oh, so I'm just going to like jump in and eat 100 grams. We're like, no. You want to slowly be introducing that protein, allow your body that time to adapt, to start being able to break it down, because if you're not breaking down, you're not utilizing it. And I love that you talked about, making sure it's cooked well, adding in those spices, eating it during the daytime. We don't want to be having this like steak dinner at 10 p.m. and then going to bed. We want to be making sure that we're eating it at the right times and looking for those whole food forms.
Absolutely. Yeah. And, I think I'm a big fan of everybody just like going into talking to their grand aunts, grand uncles, while we still have a little bit of the generation that's left, like understand how these traditional preparations were actually made and, how people got their proteins. I love studying blue zones as well, just to understand how people ate and to bring that into my lifestyle. And I tell young mothers, right, I have 2 daughters and I'm like, started day one, like as early as 10 months, my daughters were eating khichdi, which was, lentils and rice. And we eat a bowl of lentils every single day and then added protein wherever we can.
Yeah. And I love that. Like that talk of the blue zones it's such an incredible thing to research. I know both Cris and I have researched as well. And when you learn about these, more ancient cultures, the ways of preparation and the community and all of these things that go into it, it can just have such a profound shift in our life. So I'm so glad that you brought that up. Now, before we finish up, I did want to touch a little bit on your book, and you've also talked, as we've been going through our conversation, about your inner climate method. So I'd love to know, when you're working with the inner climate method, like, how did you develop it and what do you include in it?
I basically realized that there was too much jargon out there in the health world and the nutrition world. And Ayurveda was no different. It had become very academic and prescriptive. And now it's just a bunch of terms thrown out. But I'm like, how do I speak a universal language that everybody understands? Now, we all know that the climate on the planet was right, and that's why life thrives here. There's no other planet. There's no Venus. There's no Mercury. There's nowhere else, right? Climate was right. Life exists. And we didn't have to do anything. We didn't need laboratories. From single cell organisms, we've become these full-blown mammals, like a trillion species living in one planet. So I know, and so similarly, our body is housed to trillions of microorganisms, microbiome that lives within us. And we know for anything, you buy a plant, you plant a seed in any soil, the first question you'll ask, is the climate right for this to thrive? And so there is an inner climate, and you can understand it. And the climate is warm and moist, and like that's a whole different conversation. And whenever we go off, you're inflamed, you're hot and humid, or you're cold and dry and depleted. So there is a framework that I have created for people to start understanding that how do you go off what your breath is, warm and moist, what your reproductive fluids are, warm and moist, what your blood is, warm and moist, how you like people to come, warm and moist, emotions, love, gratitude, compassion. So there's a whole system, so we understand warm and moisture. How do we bring it into, that ideal inner climate? I wanted homeostasis to be a comprehensible concept. But also, when you understand homeostasis, you also want to start understanding where your body has deviated and gone off homeostasis. So when I start offering this lens to people, they start understanding. And then naturally, like I literally will ask them, I said, what do you think? Coffee, you think it's building up more heat? Is it cooling your body down? They're like, it's building heat, it stimulates me. I wanted people to start understanding, like not having to Google, not having to call their nutritionist, and not having to be scared at every consumption decision. Similarly, oh my God, when I talk to this person, I feel very hot and dry. Now, while the part of that trigger is within you, but I want people to start developing that self-awareness of their weather changes in their body, their climate changes in their body. And that's why this framework, as well as the systematic application in different areas of your life, just helps people to do this in a very, very easy way. And my book, I'll talk briefly, it's called Your Body Already Knows. And it does talk about my inner climate method and 2 other principles to really take us back to as much. We start that undoing journey and say that, listen, as babies, we knew to eat from our mother's breast. Like we don't need a nutritionist. A baby never uses its mouth. I mean, I know you have children. I'm sure, Cris, I don't know about you, but I have 2 daughters as well. And I know that the baby is born, never uses its mouth, looks for the breast, starts eating, knows how to do it. Deer know that they're plant-based. Tigers don't get carried away by the 5 a.m. rule and wake up in the morning, Animals even know how to what plants to eat when they're not feeling well. So there is such a system and order, and the over-intellectualization, excessive information has taken us far away from that innate wisdom. So the book Your Body Already Knows gives people 3 principles, inner climate is one of them, and teaches them how do you apply it to these various areas of your life to systematically, A, start undoing, B, start really living in a manner which brings you more and more towards that homeostasis where life thrives. And then you naturally feel right. And I also offer this in a program.
I love the title of your book, Your Body Already Knows, because that's exactly it. Your body has that innate wisdom. The baby knows how to drink from the mother's breast. It is this innate knowing your body. And when we start to over academic everything and make it so complicated, it doesn't need to be like that, because your body truly knows what to do and we allow it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm so glad that both of you resonate with this and pretty much speak the same language. I mean, we all our bodies should speak the same language as long as we're connected to our intuition. And I'm glad you 2 are.
We love it. I know both Cris and I thoroughly enjoyed this talk. We finally scratched Ayurvedic doctor off of our guest list. So thank you, Nidhi, so much for coming in today. Now, if you are just as excited about this conversation as Cris and I have, I highly recommend getting Nidhi's book, Your Body Already Knows. It released yesterday, so it's brand new. Go and order it, add to cart. You're going to want to read it. I'm so excited to read mine. I think it's just going to be such a phenomenal addition to all of that knowledge in my brain already. So Nidhi, thank you so much for coming on today. If you want to learn more about her, I put all of her information in the show notes. inner climate method, how to see her on Instagram, a link to her website for the book. So everything you need is going to be there. Nidhi, thank you so much. And that's it, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll see you next week on the Clear Skin Chronicles.